I am no longer an RV lifer. And I gotta tell you guys, this was such a blessing. From one day to the next, I thought I was going to quartzite, and I ended up moving out of my home on wheels and giving it away. Hi, we're Autumn and Chloe. I've been a nomad since the spring of 2022, initially living out of my converted car camper while traveling across the American West. After a year and a half on the road, we upgraded to live in a Class C RV that we renovated with our own two hands. However, 16 months after that, it kept breaking, so we decided to give it away. By the way, I'm on a cruise in the Caribbean. I'm coming at you right here from my cruise room cabin. I attempted to do some filming on deck. It was way too loud, way too windy. This isn't necessarily the setting I wanted to have for this video, but it's where I'm at. So here we are, and welcome. One of the questions is, was this decision impulsive? And the answer to that is no, it was long overdue. The decision to purchase the RV was impulsive. I have learned so much about what I would not do and what I don't recommend others doing, which is don't buy an RV when you're hot. I bought an RV in August of 2023 because it was way too hot. I made a decision to get something with an air conditioner as soon as I possibly could get it. And that was because I also was attempting to force my will on the location I preferred to be in. So those are my two great mistakes, you guys, that led to the impulsive decision of buying the RV. I have since long been humbled and realized that had I just gone up to Telluride or Leadville, Colorado, instead of purchasing a $10,000 rig that I instantly regretted purchasing, then life would have been very different. But, you know, this RV, it was my first experience with true regret. And that's been an interesting thing to, have. Because I've had some wild and crazy and difficult experiences in my life, which we all have, right? But I always was like, well, I'm learning from it. There wasn't this sense of a regret. There was always a sense of gratitude. For the 16 months that I had Old Clunk, I kept trying to make it work. I've even struggled somewhat on YouTube since getting the RV because I really want my content to be true to my experience, and I've had high highs and low lows. I've shared multiple times throughout this process that I wasn't happy. I shared it here. I shared the struggles here. I shared I almost wanted to sell it here. You could see my happiness and energy decrease here. I kept getting sick, which is here and here. Because I knew I had made the mistake of purchasing the RV, I didn't want to make another impulsive mistake. I then swung to the opposite end of decision making, which was indecision. I just couldn't decide. And I couldn't decide because, seriously, look how beautiful the renovation was. Man, that's pretty. And that's what would constantly always seduce me back into the decision of wanting to keep it. And I loved looking at it because it was so pretty. But it was this really pretty thing that was incredibly toxic and didn't work. And when I say toxic, I mean my relationship with the RV, because I regretted it, I didn't love it, and what I really had to look at was really the tanking level of happiness that I've had. I'm free, I'm free, I'm free, I'm free. So what the heck happened to the engine? Let me put it this way. I got tired of getting the green light on the engine only for things to continue to break and break and break and break. So when I first purchased Old Clunk, I got a pre-sale inspection on the engine before I made the purchase, and I got a green light. Within 3 weeks of having the RV, I had a fuel leak, which is a serious problem. I also had the alternator break and the battery die, right away, right off the bat. So I went to go get that fixed, and then a different set of mechanics said, hey, everything else in the engine looks good. There's nothing else that we would fix at this time. So by that point, I had 3 mechanics fix problems that just arose like that, but then said, look, nothing else needs fixed, nothing else needs replaced. So in October, before I knew I was going to leave for the winter, I was like, I need to have a full inspection. Again, I don't want to be out in the middle of nowhere and need towed. I don't want to break down in the middle of nowhere. And I had a mechanic thoroughly look it over for yet another inspection, and I was told that it looked good. Then I drive down to Phoenix, from Flagstaff to Phoenix, and on that drive, like my first long drive of only like 120 miles, there was such a serious antifreeze leak that I was not able to even move the engine without getting this like clotting gel coolant. So then it's like, all right, well, there's a water pump leak. And then by this point I was like, it's it, I'm selling it. I was going to Quartzsite and it just completely stalled my trip. But see, that's the thing with that RV. It stalled my life constantly. I could not plan, I could not schedule, and I could not count on any kind of reliability, because after I poured thousands of dollars into fixing one thing, something else would break and I couldn't even predict it. I attempted to predict. I attempted preventative maintenance. That's why I got ahead, went to mechanics to have more and more inspections, and more mechanics were just saying, look, there's nothing we can essentially fix. Stuff is going to break down because it's a 1991, but as of right now, there's nothing to fix. I'm not sure I adequately answered what happened to the engine. And the truth is I don't know. Something happened where the antifreeze spewed out of the water pump and the radiator. Then I got the water pump fixed because that was the initial sort of estimated diagnostic. I spent $1,300 to get the water pump fixed, only to discover that the radiator had all these holes in it too. And then the radiator, I couldn't just go buy a new one. It had to be rebuilt because of its age. And that was going to be like $1,100. At that point, I was just like, no, because even to move it or to get it into storage was going to be another few $1,000s between either towing it, and then storage places didn't want an inoperable RV in their lot. So that was difficult and tricky. I'm sure I could have found something, but it was such a stressful, time crunched time. And that was another just stressful thing. It was always difficult to figure out where the heck to park that thing, whether I was living in it or whether I was not. Storing it was just such a pain to try to figure out. Everything was a pain with that RV, you guys. By this point, I decided to give the RV away to a family member. And this family member was going to get the radiator fixed. As my family member was in the process of getting the radiator fixed, well, something happened to the transmission and all the fluid just started leaking out. So it was like every liquid in the engine basically was coming out of the engine in some capacity. It's like you'd fixed one thing and it was like dominoes, and the next thing was just breaking. And by this point, I was just thinking, thank goodness I made that decision to give it away before I saw the whole issue with the transmission. Because that stuff is expensive. All that was confirmation that I had made the right decision. It was a really hard year, you guys. I don't recommend it. I mean, if other people are like me, you're going to have to learn through experience. No matter how much you hear other people say things like, don't do it. Don't do it. Oh, gosh. So one of the questions, how much would it have cost to fix it? My soul, my happiness, my dreams. It would have cost so much energy. The stress led to serious physiological stress. I got sick 8 times in the 16 months that I had the RV. And by comparison, I had not been sick in like 2.5 years before that. Like, it took so much energy to deal with that thing that I was constantly feeling resentful, regretful, and exhausted. And that's a state for me that I'm not willing to live in. I was willing to give it ample opportunity to see, was there something within my power that I could do to generate a different experience, including preventative maintenance? Was there something I could do, including a perspective shift? I became a nomad for a multitude of reasons, but first and foremost, to have a life of freedom, and that RV was not freedom. I became a nomad for increased self-reliance, and that RV brought about dependence. Good riddance, old clunk. Good riddance. When I was like, I'm giving it away, I can't even tell you. It's like life came back up into me. What am I going to miss most about the RV? I think the privacy is what I'm going to miss the most, and looking at its beauty. It's like artistic beauty of turning that old vintage thing into something super glamorous. I mean, it was really pretty. I miss being able to go number 2 indoors. That speaks to the privacy. And I am not going to be able to do that in Little Red, but I think I have a solution. Cooking inside, not having to battle the elements, that was nice. I'm not going to miss how miserable life was becoming. Another question I received was, why not just not spend a ton of money on anything but the engine and kind of makeshift the interior? Well, I tried that. I literally made the decision after the whole mice invasion. I'm like, I'm not going to invest any more on things that I can sort of manually bring in. Like if my stove broke down, I was planning to use my Coleman camping stove. If my fridge were to break down, I was going to use my little portable car fridges. I was already planning on that. And then the RV was just like, oh no. The infrastructure of the outside of the coach part of the RV started falling apart in a way that hindered me from driving it. Like the little basement flappy door started falling off, or the propane started leaking, or the electrical system almost burned me down a few times, and then of course the engine problems. So where is Clunk gonna go? First, my family member was able to give it to a long, lifelong friend who happens to be a longtime friend of my extended family. So I didn't know this person until this situation had us meet, but it made me really happy because this person takes really, really good care of RVs and has a spot of land in a beautiful part of Arizona and is going to enjoy it and is going to tend to it and is going to have the time and the space to put love and care into it. So Clunk lives on. So a number of people ask me why I didn't do that. Why not buy a really inexpensive piece of land or even throw it in storage for a little while and then use it down the line? I did actually consider that for a short period of time. I just didn't want it anymore. I'm not at a point in my nomadic life where I'm shifting to homesteading. That seems to be almost like an archetypal path of the nomad archetype, is that you go from nomading to homesteading. And I'm not there yet. In fact, that was yet another reason that I had so much regret when I bought it and initially realized, oh my gosh, now I'm grounded. So what's next? Well, I am not in a rush. I am so grateful that I have Little Red. I almost sold Little Red a few times since I've had the RV, and I am just so grateful that I kept her. I am so surrendering to weather. I will go where the weather takes me. I'm actually really looking forward to that surrender, to choose locations based off of 60 degrees. Yeah, not 70. I don't like the 70s. I like the 60s when I'm in my car. I'm looking forward to not having a vehicle breaking down all the time. I actually think Little Red's going to need some maintenance, but at least I can go to mechanics without struggling to find ones who can service my rig. There were so many difficulties in finding mechanics to service my rig because of its size, because of its age. And then I'm also looking forward to saving money. I'm looking forward to working a very decent amount on some really exciting projects. And I'm looking forward to an ease of life. Winter is hard as a nomad. It really takes grit, but I know what to prepare for. I know to expect it to be hard. I know to expect days of lots of wind. I'm also looking forward to spending time with community. There's several nomadic places that I'm planning to go, and I can go to those places with ease. I'm looking forward to going to the gym more, to showering more. The RV was so hard to move that even when I brought Little Red with me, I was exhausted all the time, and it was too hard to go shower as frequently as I did when I was living in the car. When I lived in the car, I would shower 2 to 3 times a week, and I would also get a workout in because I wouldn't go to the gym without both working out and then taking a shower. When I got that RV and it grounded me in one location, which is not the life I wanted as a nomad, the best way I can describe it is everything in me was weighed down by the 12,000 pounds that thing was. I am so looking forward to not having to level. I'm looking forward to being able to just move and zoom and zip. I got my life back, you guys. That 12,000 pound weight that I keep talking about, it was like sinking me so slowly that it was like the frog in boiling water situation, where I started adjusting to greater levels of stress and greater levels of unhappiness. And I think that's one of the reasons that in this video I had as much peace as I had, because I did. This was one of the best weeks of my life. And when I reflect on that, I'm like, well, yeah, I did have a beautiful house in these beautiful views, and it didn't break. Should my measure of happiness be because something didn't go wrong? No. So why give it away instead of sell it? Well, multiple reasons for that. And first and foremost, selling it would not have felt right to my conscience. It was for sale when all of this happened, and I had like 3 conversations in progress for a potential trade, all of which I canceled as soon as it broke down. Although I know that buyers absolutely have a responsibility to check out the thorough nature of the vehicles, well, look what happened to me. I had that responsibility. The person that I purchased this from said they had never had a buyer in their entire lifetime of selling vehicles be as thorough and take as long as I took to check every single thing I could in that RV. I had a pre-sale inspection on the engine, and it still ended up being a horrible experience for me. So I didn't want to pass a horrible experience on to someone else at their expense. And again, I get it. I know people are going to disagree with that, and that's okay. Additionally, there's a really practical element to this. In order to even sell it, given that it broke down in this location I was not planning to spend time at in the winter, I would have needed to store it while I went on a 2-week holiday vacation with my family. I also would have had to navigate all of these logistics that I did not even want to navigate, that were interfering with my work, in my income, in my progress, with incredible projects that I have going on. I did not want the RV to be an anchor keeping me from my incredible projects, and it did interfere with them. And everyone in all of the professional capacities that I had has been so understanding and so patient, but I don't like to keep people waiting when I have projects going on. So let's say I did want to put all of the time and energy into selling it, it would have been for like a minimal profit. I would have had to invest in storage and a repair enough to get it mobile in order to sell it for such a minimal profit. What's next is either going to be a minivan or some kind of SUV, which I'm kind of leaning more toward the SUV because I'd love to go to locations that require higher clearance. However, I also think a minivan would be amazing. And so many people have shared their experiences with minivans, so thank you for sharing those. And so many people have said they've had RVs and moved to minivans and loved them. And I've had the great blessing of being able to tour multiple people's minivans, which has been so cool. I've loved that. And that's helped me to see how much potential, gosh, I want to get my hands on a minivan and do a build. I'm looking forward to that, to creating a build that's going to be versatile and amazing. And I don't need a ton of space. I'm looking forward to living with the simplicity of such few things. I actually barely need more than what my car holds. I just need a bit more power. I need more roof space to have both a cargo box and solar panels, which I don't have on a sedan. And I just need approximately, I don't know, like 30 to 50 more cubic feet of space. Just enough cubic feet that I can go number 2 in my vehicle. Yeah, that's a thing. The car really is too small for long-term living. But yeah, I can absolutely do it another 3 months, another 6 months, heck, even another year to save enough money to have a rig that's going to be amazing. This is a question that people ask me in my personal life, like, why don't you just finance something? And I'm not saying I would never do that, but I probably won't ever do that. Like, I love owning what I have free and clear. When you don't have debt, there is such a tremendous amount of freedom. It's important to note that even though I lost $22,000 by giving the rig away, that all really depends on the comparison point. Say that I spent 16 months at the fair market rental value of an apartment, like a studio to 1-bedroom apartment. That was about $1,800 to $2,200 a month in Flagstaff during the duration of time that I lived in Old Clunk. Then tack on at least $200 a month for utilities. So let's say I spent $2,000 per month on an apartment. Well, I would have had less privacy and I would have had far less beautiful views. I also wouldn't have had the life lessons. And that would have been $32,000 in 16 months. That is like a loss because I'd never see it again. So it's all about the comparison point. It's a loss if I think, yeah, I owned a car free and clear and then I put $22,000 into a rig that I then gave away. However, I still see it as a $10,000 gain. I think I need to start saying that. I gained $10,000 by giving my RV away. Would you get a Class C again? Would you get an RV again? What about a tow-behind travel trailer? Great questions. And my answer is I would never get a Class C again. I would never have a motorhome again. And I never want to have an engine in a vehicle that large that would require specialty mechanics and mechanics that have a garage big enough to fit it. That was such a difficult part of having this RV, which is kind of a bummer because that means I will not be having a schoolie, and I think schoolies are so amazing and cool and wonderful, and that will not be a part of my life. Other RVs. Well, I don't want a prefabricated rig. So I learned from this experience that that's just not for me. I want to be able to construct and build everything with my own two hands, with all the simplicities that I love, with all of the capabilities to be self-reliant if something breaks, because I know exactly where everything is. I know how it went together, so I know what to do if it falls apart. A tow-behind trailer. Yeah, actually, I probably will have a tow-behind trailer, but we're talking at least a year from now, if not longer, and who knows, by then I might change my mind. I think it would be fantastic to have something I could stand in that basically stays in the state of Arizona. Easy to tow. I absolutely love, love, love horse trailers that are renovated. So super small, super tiny, super functional. But again, that's just kind of out in the future. Well, that concludes the video on why we chose to give our RV away. Cheers to that, to freedom, to happiness, to learning. I'm grateful for you guys. I received so much kindness, compassion, support, encouragement. I loved hearing other people's stories. It's helpful to know that in the midst of all of the chaos of this crazy busy world, we're not alone. There were more questions that I didn't get to in this video because I'm noticing this is already quite long. So I am going to speak to those in my upcoming vlog, kind of not formally a Q&A video, but I will speak to some continued questions. Continue to ask your questions. I love answering the questions. I think it's a lot of fun, which is why these videos end up being pretty long. What do you think? Just what do you think of this crazy wild ride that we're on? Happy 2025. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe.